Well, I'd like to thank you for inviting me, even though it's short notice. Um, my goal today, I hope, is that I will give you some encouragement to use the landscape love and for your own gardens to enhance with bulbs by extending your seasons and color. Now, I'm going to start out. This is my garden that I had in New Jersey. This is the front of that garden. As you can see, I love bulbs. That's where I really fell in love with tulips. Tulips grow a lot better in New Jersey than they do here, by the way. This is the garden that was in Ford's Colony that Bill had mentioned that was by the golf course. And I love planting things there that people normally don't see to encourage people to try other things. Oops, wait, every now and then it's slow and I miss a picture. I'm missing a picture, let me find it. There, this is my current home. And I have to thank Peggy Croft for coming and helping me with the design because I love a very informal garden. My husband loves a formal garden. So she helped us by doing a formal colonial landscaping in my courtyard and made the garden beautiful. And then I could do all my informal plantings and we compromised. So let's start out with our bulbs. You can have bulbs in the winter. These are ones that will bloom for you in the winter. Actually, on this page, 5 of the 7 have already bloomed this year. And 2 of them bloomed in December of last year. So you can get very early bulbs. This is what a garden can look like in early spring. I didn't show winter because winter's one little teeny flower, but every one of those little flowers is so precious. Then we get to your mid-spring and early spring. I'm in early mid. Here's our mid-spring. Mid-spring, it can be full of tremendous color. As you can see, my whole garden looks like bulbs. But I use what's called the lasagna method. And that is that I will plant more than one plant in an area. And that's how I can get color all year round. So you will see where I put the little bulbs above and between the bigger bulbs. And I'll put the tulips between the daffodils and the Dutch irises between those. And in there are my perennials. And then I plant annuals. And here's our late spring. Late spring is your toughest garden. This is the one, only a few of your perennials are starting to bloom and the annuals are too small to really see. Now I want to start with the Aerium italicum, and thanks to Elizabeth McCoy, I used her pictures. And when you're planting a garden, you really need to start looking now and this year to determine what you want to do next year. And it really starts right now. If those who work at the Williamsburg Botanical Garden, you probably see the arum there and how gorgeous it is. It's in the bulb bed if you haven't seen it. The leaves are beautiful in the winter, the variegations in it. Then in the spring, you get the space, and then the foliage dies down. You may plant caladiums here, and then in the fall, you'll get the beautiful red berries. I'm putting galanthus in here because it is one of the earliest. It is a very small flower and you've got to know where to go look for it. Otherwise, you're not going to notice it. You can walk right by it if you're not looking. This flower, I do not always have a good return rate. So I don't buy many. They're expensive, but I do like it. They prefer well-drained soil. In fact, all the bulbs that I will talk about, except for the few exceptions, like well-drained soil. You need to put lots of compost and make it a good draining soil to have good success. Also, these are deer and rabbit proof. My favorite, one of my favorites are the Iris reticula. And this one, I absolutely go crazy. I think I buy every single different color of them that I can. I put them near my paths because they're very early and it can be cold, but to go out and see them, and I have some pictures of these to help you, encourage you. Here's Canta. Look at those gorgeous blues and the detail. Eye catcher, it's a relatively new one. It's phenomenal. Here's Painted Lady. This is the first one that I just ever tried of that, so I'd never seen this one before. As they say, I love to try things. Now, the next flower are your crocuses. You can have your snow crocuses or species crocus, or your Dutch or giant crocuses, as they're called. The problem with crocuses, they smell like nuts. So you get these little squirrels and they can start digging up your crocuses. And that can be a real pain in the neck. Now, if you want to avoid the squirrels, you can try Crocus tomasianus because they do not smell like nuts. So that helps. But I have found that if I put smelly stuff down with them, that they pretty much leave them alone. The deer and the rabbit, the rabbits will try a bite and find out they don't really like them. I think they're too small for the deer to notice that much. The mice and the voles will eat them. So you can soak them in something that's bad smelling, like liquid fence for about a minute, then let them dry out and then plant them. I also put like deer scram on top of it, or plant ski, something to make the ground smell bad. Actually, I'm trying to remember, I think I had a mole repellent that I bought years ago. It was so bad, I put it in a sealed container and put that on, and nobody, including me, wants to go buy it. But here are your crocuses. So when you want to do crocuses, always plant a lot, minimum 25. If you can put 50 in, even better. But when you plant them, they open in the sunlight. And so when you think of which ones you want to put money into, look at how they look closed, like the Goldilocks is very, very pretty closed. Tricolor is gorgeous when it opens. It is also pretty when it closes. Pickwick is one of your larger bulbs, the giant type of bulbs. Blue Pearl, I'll show you in a minute. Ruby Giant Tomasianus is a really nice Tomasianus. And Prince Claus is another very pretty one, because notice it has the variegations on the side, the two colors, so it looks very beautiful when it's closed. Here is a Tomasianus, again, that is squirrel resistant because it doesn't smell like nuts, and that's what that one looks like. I show Blue Pearl because I have fallen in love with this one of the species crocuses. I plant them where the sunlight will get it in the afternoon as it's starting to come down. I'm more of an afternoon person than a morning person. So if you're a morning person, they may open up. They take a little while before they open in the morning. So probably better in the afternoon. But it glows unbelievably gorgeous if you put a batch of these in your garden. Here's Joan d'Arc, which is one of your Vernus crocuses, or the big giant crocuses they call them. And if you'll notice, it blooms a little bit later because you'll see some hyacinths in here. That one's called Yellowstone. But look in the back right corner of the picture. That's Arch Snake, which is a very pretty white, smaller crocus, snow crocus. See, that's almost done. And look at the size difference in them. When you're planting crocuses, also think about the color that you choose to plant. If you've got a lot of green, the white will show up in front of that green. If you don't have much green for it, your purple colors, not green, but your purple colors kind of disappear in the background. So try to put them where you think they have a better chance of standing out. This one, if you're not growing an anemone now, please try to put this one in because of the color. There's two types. There's an anemone blenda. I have grown it in New York State much more than here. It opens in the sunlight. What? Oh. It opens in sunlight and it's very small and it can get lost. And I have so many flowers, it gets lost in my garden. So I don't put it in anymore. But the anemone coronaria, that one has so much color and they have come back. I have had some, I think I've been 3 springs in this garden now with flowers blooming, and some of them have come back all 3 years, and that's why they're blooming right now. It was blooming in December, but they will bloom late into the spring if you get the bulbs, depending on the size of the bulbs. I have found that Brett and Becky sells the best anemones of anyone else. Some of them are very, very small. The prices are much cheaper, but I highly recommend the larger size. Just to show you the color that it can add to your garden. And then here's a close-up of what it looks like for you. Here's another one. I mean, that one I've had open really early. And then you can get even the white ones for those of you who have a lot of green. There's a bride that's a singular one. This is a double one. And just to show you again, if you can't decide what color you want, there's a St. Bridget anemone mix that you can buy. And these are the anemones that they don't classify with any name, specialty ones. So they can be different singles, doubles, and variations of colors. And they are lovely too. I don't know how many of you grow Iphion, the spring starflower. I only recently started trying that when I moved to this new home, and I fell in love with it. It's very little. It's only 3 to 6 inches small, but the word like starflower, it pops. It's little, but it gives you this little bit of sparkle to your garden. And it's great under your trees and shrubs. It's a great naturalizer. Mine are coming back. And also deer and rabbit resistant. I haven't had anyone bother them. So let me show you what, did I miss a picture now? This is what my garden looks like when they're blooming. This garden you'll see a little bit later, those are miniature daffodils that were blooming in there. A few are blooming when the daffodils are blooming, but this is if the daffodils are done. And I planted them around with all the little miniature daffodils, and look how much it extends the color to that little bed that I have with my peony that you're not hearing about today. And in the background is a miniature tulip, by the way. Okay, let me get it go. That, I know I missed one. There it is. Here is just a bigger picture of what one of them looked like. Now, ranunculus is something I used to only buy in pots if I could find them. And I moved to Virginia, and good luck finding them. So they are not hardy, quote, in our zone, but I couldn't resist. I said, let me try them. They have come back. This is the 3rd year, and I see the foliage coming up for some of them already. Not 100%, but some are coming back. What I did is I planted them in the hottest, warmest spot that I could. That's my south brick foundation. So they get the heat from the foundation that helps make it feel like it's in a different zone. And let me show you more pictures, and maybe it's worth trying. I wouldn't try too many, but try some. They look like roses and miniature peonies. And the rabbits and deers resistant. The one problem is they're not husband resistant. It's the same thing with the anemones. My husband never pulls weeds. First time I planted one, and when I was in New Jersey, he pulled them all and said, oh, I weeded the garden for you. He did it in the fall. Oh, these foliage comes up in the fall. But now he doesn't weed anything for me. No problems. Here's the some of the colors that you can have in them. Look how gorgeous that is, isn't it? I really think you should try them. And as you can see, Homestead Venerum is blooming at the same time with these. Hyacinths, I think you all know about, but they are resistant. And actually, I planted some, and I'll tell you, I have bulbs everywhere. Guarantee, I plant bulbs. When I plant bulbs, I find tunnels everywhere. And some of the tunnels, you see that they'll tunnel 360 degrees around the bulbs. But they came to the hyacinth bulb, and they pushed it out of the ground. So I just replanted it back in. But they smell good. Put them where you can enjoy the scent. Most bulbs are nice to plant in groupings and circulars and waves. Hyacinths is one of the few bulbs that you can actually get away with a straight line that looks nice along a walkway. And the colors are different. I don't know if you tried the yellow. Here's the city of Harlem, another yellow. I showed you Yellowstone before. Gypsy Queen is an apricot color. Aida, I'm not sure how to say it. Aida is a gorgeous purple color. I fell in love with that at the Philadelphia Flower Show. Pink Pearl is very reasonable, and it is one of the prettiest pinks that you can buy, and it's in all the stores. Here we have Gypsy Princess, Blue Jacket's in the middle, and then finally the Gypsy Queen. Blue Jacket is another very common one, and it is usually reasonable and a very pretty color. Now there's a different type of hyacinth, the multi-flower hyacinth. Let me just say, when you go back to our hyacinths for 1 second, I should tell you something. Here we go. It takes sometimes I skip pictures. When you're planting hyacinths, if you haven't planted any and you would like some now, you can go to the store, box stores, buy them, enjoy them inside, then put them outside, harden them off a little bit through the sunlight, leave them outside, and then plant them when you're ready to plant in the spring, when the foliage is ready to die back. Your odds of them coming back, if it's in a fairly dry spot, are very good, and you can get a second year out of them. The third year when they come up, the second year, they're not as tight as this. They're a little more spread apart. The third year, I've had some come back, but then they're really not showy at all. But now I want to go to the multi-flowering hyacinths. Now I told you that. The multi-flowering hyacinths are more spread apart with the flowers, but they have more than one stem per bulb. So it's a looser looking, a different feeling. This is Anastasia, and wait till you see the one. This is Pink Festival. That's 5 bulbs, and it gives you an entirely different look with only 5 bulbs because of the multiple stems. And next to it, you can see Yellow Queen, and you have some Mascari Big Smile. I don't know if I'll cover Mascari today, probably depends on our timing. But Big Smile is the biggest one of them and best show you can get. If you are not growing Leucojum, put it in your garden. If you're on a landscape love visit and they have a kind of shady area, partial shade, full sun, they're complaining about their critters, tell them to plant Leucojum, because this one is rabbit, deer, and the voles have left it alone. And they can handle a little bit of moist soil, and they adapt to clay very well. And they have come back year after year after year for me. I have not lost a batch of Leucojum in any of my Virginia gardens. And I never grew it in New Jersey. I didn't know about it in New Jersey. But please, that is a must. So try to put that on your list when you go to recommend flowers for people. Here's a close-up picture of it. These things are fairly tall. The flowers are a little bigger than your snowdrops. They kind of look like a snowdrop. And here's a picture when I looked down and went on the ground and looked up at it. Now, narcissus, we all know narcissus. We all have the giant trumpet narcissus, but I would like to spend more time talking about some of the other ones. So you can have your double narcissus, and on the little cyclamen rapture, I absolutely love it. It's a little flower, but it's absolutely adorable. And there you can see I have my anemones. Mount Everest is blowing, and Mount Everest is growing down there. Here, if you want early daffodils, my daffodil, I actually had one open in December. Right now, they're in full bloom on it. I have planted them on my south wall again, near my foundation. This one I planted more in the middle of the garden, and they bloom a little bit later because you can see the crocuses are blooming. This is the earliest one to bloom, but it's not as sensational or as big as the other trumpets you can buy, but it is the earliest. So I'll tell you, I walk out there in the freezing cold weather and I enjoy them. And you can see this is King of the Stripe, and I have some Mascari, just regular plain Mascari growing in the background. Now, Cyclaminius, this is called Tweety Bird. I think more people should try Cyclaminius. They're one of the earlier ones to bloom. This is at the end of their life. They've been around for a few weeks now, because you can see the brown on them. Cyclaminias have longer, thin trumpets like that, and their petals fly backwards. They reflect like a bird flying. What is going to change? Whoops, it takes too long sometimes for me to draw the picture. They come in some different colors. And again, I grow quite a few of them because they're early and they're different. The large cup daffodils give you the most variety and the most color that you can buy. This is Can Girl. So think about it when you go to look at them. Think about the colors. The other thing when you're looking at daffodils, if you use the Brent and Becky catalog, I don't know if I hold it up to my camera. If you use that catalog, if he puts a heart by them, think about that one if you can't make up your mind, because every one that I've grown where he puts a heart that he loves has done well. Here's another one. They come in pinks. This is Martha Stewart. Beautiful. Now, let's be a little bit different and also think about what people who complain about the foliage. Oh, the daffodil foliage doesn't go. Have those people plant more earlier daffodils and think of the jonquilla narcissus. This one's called Beautiful Eyes. Narcissus, why they're nice is the foliage is a little bit more narrow, more grass-like, so they don't tend to be, the soil doesn't seem to be as bad when they grow, because you need to leave that, the foliage, the foliage doesn't seem to be so bad. The foliage should stay up 6 weeks after the flower finishes. Once it starts turning brown, you can cut it back. But please do not braid it, do not cover it. The more sun it gets, the better flowers you're going to have the following years. Now, the other thing about the jonquillas, they can come in single or multiple flowers per stem. So read the description carefully. The ones I've chose to show you are multiple flowers per stem, and this is called Beautiful Eyes. By the way, on the right, you'll see Slice of Life, which I'll talk about split cups in a little while. Here's another one, Silver Smiles. Again, I can have, some have 1 flower, some have up to 3 flowers per stem. Then we get into the Tricestus. They also can have multiple flowers per stem. This is another good flower to consider and look at more. This is Craigford. It's one of the earlier ones. And again, you can see the multiple flowers. Their petals, this is important to listen, their petals are more rounded and they stand upright a little bit more. So they put on a really nice show. Here is Avalanche. Avalanche has many flowers per stem. And that one, I actually had one of them blooming in mid-December. I couldn't believe it when I saw it this past year. It's an early flower. It's not too tall, but it is early and it looks really nice. Now I'll talk about the Trianthus. This is one, they are pretty, but you need to understand they are nodding. They look down. So look at this picture, the pink in the background, that's me. I'm leaning over trying to hold the flower up to get a picture of it because it nods so much, it's hard to even get my camera underneath to get a picture of it. And here is Sunlight Sensation. There's Moonlight Sensation and Starlight Sensation if you want the lighter ones, but they are looking downward. So what I do is I plant them higher. I have a slope and I plant them higher on the slope so that I'm a little bit down looking up at them. But these ones, you got to have the right spot if you want to put them in. Now the miniatures one, I'm going to really cover more. This is one you've got to encourage on Landscape Love visits. I am starting to tell all my Landscape Love people to start planting these miniatures. And you need to think about which miniatures that you want to plant. Because the ones that have multiple stems and some have multiple flowers per stem, both, put on an unbelievable show. The best thing is the bulbs are really small. So you only have to plant them 3 inches deep. So where you have a deciduous tree and you would like to add color, the bigger daffodils, 6 inches, forget it. You could kill yourself if you're using a drill to get them in. This doesn't have to go in so deep, and they're smaller, so you're more likely to get success of finding and getting some in those roots. So, and if you'll notice, my Iphia, my spring starflowers are already starting to bloom, and these happen to be jonquilla, so the foliage is a little smaller, a little grass-like, and if you'll notice, remember back to the starflower picture that I had shown you before, you could see the foliage among them, and it didn't look too bad. So I always remember twinkling yellow. Sometimes I say yellow, twinkling, but I tell people, think twinkle, twinkle, little star when you're looking in the catalog to buy it. This one blooms really early, and it puts on as good a show as any of your big yellow narcissus will, and people will stop and enjoy them as they walk by. Let's see, he's going to draw the next picture. Come on. It's not going to the next picture. Whoops, we skipped 2. It's slow. Go back. Here we go. Fernandesi is another one of these beautiful blooming early narcissus. There's one called More and More and Baby Bloomer, and they bloom a little bit later, but also again the same thing of having more than one stem and multiple flowers. Now we're going to talk about a little about double. Double daffodils are absolutely gorgeous. Here is your Candy Princess. Double daffodils are the most difficult daffodils to grow. The stems can get so heavy that they bend over, they break, and also the other problem is they can blast. And what blast means is that you see the bud and it may start to open or may not open, and it turns brown, and you're going, what did I do wrong? And if I don't recommend them unless you're crazy like I am, who are willing to take loss of some of them. Sometimes none of the ones of one type may bloom that year. The ones that have multiple flowers per stem, such as Early Cheer, Bridal Crown, Sir Winston Churchill, those tend to do much better. So if you want to try double daffodils, this type works a lot better and had better return success and better standing up of the flowers. Early Cheer is a very early one. That's why it's called Early Cheer. A lot of times it'll be grown inside because it doesn't need so much cold. And by the way, another thing, the jonquillas don't need as much cold as some of the rest of the daffodils, so they tend to do better here. Now here is a very unusual double. I do not have a good return rate on them, but I do try them anyway because they're so unique. I don't know how many of you tried hoop daffodils, but I have fallen in love with these hoop daffodils. This one, if you can see the date, was February 2019. Actually, it had started blooming in January, just didn't have a good picture of it. That daffodil is blooming right now in my garden. So it is adorable. You got to put it in close to where you can see it. Notice where in the background that is my driveway. So guess what? It's in a warmer place. There's a brick walkway next to it. So I've put it in a warm place to encourage the earlier blooms and where I'm going to see it when I get out of my car. Here's another picture. Julie Jane blooms a little bit later. I also don't have it in as warm a place. Then the split cups. That is a gorgeous daffodil. I highly recommend you use split cup daffodils because they are just so pretty. And these I tend to buy almost every one as long as the price is not astronomical. Here's Vanilla Peach. Vanilla Peach, when I bought my first property in Ford's Colony, before we even built, I came and I planted these by the walkway. And what was very interesting is over the years as they grew, the batch got bigger and bigger. And it got so big that the little bulbs were already out of the ground even in the summertime. I mean, they just were, even if they foliage died back, you could see the little bulbs. The littler bulbs that were big enough on the towards the top, they bloomed earlier. And then the ones deeper down where I did the 6 inches would bloom later. So these things were flowering for a long, long season. Your problem is your bulbs can, once they start to multiplying after about 3 years, they kind of double almost every year, up to 32 or 64. They get a big batch. The big batch of bulbs you have, if they get too much foliage, foliage lies on top of each other, and it can actually kill back some of the bulbs in the batch. Brent says you don't have to divide them. I think dividing them is, at this point, is probably a better idea. You can dig up the whole batch, break off the bulbs. If you get very little bulbs, like one year when we were moving, I brought bulbs to people and I said, they're free. I can't guarantee you what they look like, but everyone knew I have unusual bulbs, so they grabbed them. If you have a little bulb, plant them no deeper than 3 inches, 3 times the height of that bulb, because those little bulbs cannot have enough strength to come from 6 inches. Any bulb that you have, don't plant too deep. If they're really on the small side, you don't go as deep as they recommend. If they're nice big one, go as deep as they recommend. Also, because of my philosophy of multiple things in the same place, I cannot always dig up a full batch of daffodils without destroying my perennials. So what I'll do, and it's a little bit harder, I go in and I start digging up the ones that are on the top and pulling them out. A little tougher to get them out, but I leave the ones in the bottom in. And I take the smaller ones on the top and I move them, and that will work also. When you do move them, I recommend you replant them right away, soon. They don't have to be the exact same day, but trying to save them in your garage or some cool place over the summer is a lot of work, and a lot of failure. We're just putting them in the ground. Now you see where the holes are. And when we talk holes are, you can put them. And when you're planting your garden, think about where your holes are. Right now, you should be, in this spring, planning where do you want to add color? What type of flowers do you think have it? And make notes so when you go to order in the fall, you have some idea what you want to. Here's a few more of the split cup. I mean, the colors are phenomenal, and they do well in here. The small cup narcissus don't always put on as good a show, but Jamestown, if you want to try one, is very well here. Well named because it really grows here, it multiplies and does very well. And then here's another one just to show you, Merlin. But you can see Can Can Girl in the background, and I'll tell you, some of the others will steal the show. The Dutch irises. I always put in the Dutch irises because they fill in the season where it's hard to have color between your daffodils are done, and my annuals haven't really ready to start, and my perennials, only a few are starting. I have also had them come back. I can't believe them. Some of them I planted my first year have come back for the 3rd year. They're giant. The foliage can be up to 4 feet long. Right now, I have a lot of green in my garden from these irises coming back. Here are the colors of them. Again, it's taking a while to change the picture. We'll try it again. I may have missed one. Absolutely beautiful. Really try them. The bulb is, they come in various sizes. Look at the sizes. The bigger bulb, the bigger the flower that you're going to have, and the taller the flower. Actually, after 3 years, I'm getting multiple stems, just like you think of your German irises, coming up from the same stalk. Here's another picture of how different they can look. This is a newer one, Panther. Now, Camasias. I don't see many people growing these. I have had them come back. What's really nice is they will do in wet and moist soil. Now, clay soil. I have a good return rate. When you start a new garden, beds I showed you are all brand new gardens, and you're working with this clay. New Jersey, I had more sand though. But it takes really a little bit more getting them to come back in the heavy clay, but as I enrich them, they do a better job of coming back. But they bloom in that period of when very few things will bloom for you, and you can have the color. And I put them down where I have a more wetter soil, and they have bloom there for me. And the deer and the rabbits leave them alone. And they are native flowers. They were used by the Indians to feed Lewis and Clark. Here's another one for you. And here's Sacagawea. If you remember, she was the Indian woman who helped Lewis and Clark from starving. And it has a variegated foliage that you can enjoy when it comes. It's one of the later ones of the Comasias to bloom. So now you can see my garden where I've got my Dutch irises, my Comasias, Amazonia, your blue eyes blooming there, and I have one allium blooming. And then we'll talk about alliums. If I still have, do I still have more time? I've lost track of time. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Okay, the alliums, think of blooming alliums. They can be really neat, especially the really taller ones. Ambassador is your tallest. Then you go Globemaster, then Giganteum. Purple Sensations down to like 20 to 30 inches and smaller. But the Ambassador is 48 to 52 inches. These can stand up a little bit taller. The foliage will come up first, and it may actually die back before your flower is blooming. So don't worry, it dies back usually earlier, the ones. Down on the bottom left are two short ones with big flowers. Christopher, the flowers is 8 to 10 inches long, but it's really short, 18 to 24 inches. So when you plant those, think about it, and you can't really have anything in front of it, and you got to leave enough room because the flower is so big. Shrewberty, the flower can be even bigger. They say 9 to 12 inches. That's a good 12 inches, sometimes even bigger if you got a nice size bulb. I do not always have a good return rate on those two, but they're very unique. Shrewberry, it's more like a sparkler that you're thinking of fireworks when you have the little hand sparklers. The color is at the tips of each of the stems. Then you can have shorter ones. I can't say the word, Caratavinus. I never had them come back. And in heavy clay, actually, I didn't have them bloom one year when I planted them. So I need a much looser soil than I have. Janine, which is a smaller one, they bloom much later, and you need the right spot for them because they're short and they're later blooming, so they can get lost easily. So here's pictures of my flowers. And as you can see, now I have my Dutch irises are blooming. My German irises are blooming. My peony, my early peonies are blooming. And the Gladiola vincentius is one you plant in the fall, and that is also blooming at the same time. And this one, I was in my peach tree. I had a beautiful worm that had a lot of sand in it, so they were good. They were very nice and dry, and it was right by the cart path, so people could enjoy the different types of flowers. Here is Silver Springs, very different type of one you don't think about. This one is from my new garden. Okay, come on, didn't change. All right, there's the one. Allium Summer Drummer. First time I tried planting them was here in my new garden. The foliage looks like a corn stalk. It comes up really tall, and the flowers bloom late. So I was wondering if I was ever going to get a flower. This is in the middle of May. Now your perennials are starting to bloom. And you can see there's a dahlia in the lower corner there, and Agastacia is starting to bloom for me. But it is really pretty. And I was lucky, one year the stems dried and it looked like a silver sculpture in my garden. Let's see, come on, change. Try again. No, went too far. I'm going to talk a little bit about tulips, and I'm going to say tulips is the hardest flower you can grow in Virginia. I fell in love with them in New Jersey. Tulips, you got to fight the voles. You got to soak these in bad smelling things, plant them with a little deerskin, Polanski, because the voles love tulips. When I first had voles, I only just started in New Jersey towards the end of when I lived there. And every day I'd have these tulips bloom, and one day one was on the ground because they ate the bulb, and the next day the next one was on the ground, and the next day the next one. Then when I tried planting them, they would dig up a bulb. I planted them, they dug them up and ate them. So there is a loss rate on these. So I know I'm going to lose some. I try not to put too expensive ones in. I watch as soon as I see a bit of foliage, I have to be out there, and I start putting deer scram down, Polanski down. And if the rabbits find it before me, forget it, I've lost it. And if they start to find them, then I have to use like Repel or liquid fence for it to try to prevent them from eating it. The baby bunnies, the only thing that I found to prevent baby bunnies is Repel. When I used to sit out there and inside, and I'd be eating my dinner, and I'd watch these baby bunnies and they'd be eating their dinner. And I'd go out and I'd get my liquid fence and I'd spray them, and I'd go back to eat my dinner. They'd go back to eat their dinner. So then I found Repel All. Repel All makes people and the critters choke. It doesn't last very long, but it's the only way I found for baby rabbits to work. So I will start from the back of my yard, and I'll work my way through to my house at night, just before the sun's setting, spraying it so that I don't get choked. You get choked a little, you're not going to die from it, but that's the only thing. And the other thing with flowers, just when we're talking about it, when I put baby bunnies particularly, they don't know that they dislike a flower. So they'll come and they'll bite off the foliage, the flower, and try it. And then they find out they don't like it. So anything that I plant in my garden, whether it's deer resistant or whatever, I always spray it so that if they try it, they don't like it. The other problem with tulips, okay, I think I keep passing them. The other problem with tulips is the weather. If you go through all that and you have a hot day, you may only bloom one day. But when I see flowers that look like this, I can't give up. So I'm crazy and I don't give up. If you want to try a couple tulips, think of the little species tulips. Again, little teeny bulb, doesn't have to go in so far. The plant's not very tall, but the flowers open wide. So if you do have a deciduous tree that gets sunlight under it in the spring, think about this. And why I say a deciduous tree is when I'm digging, when there's a lot of roots, the moles dig those tunnels underneath, and the voles tend to use them, and they don't tend to eat as much where the roots are really thick. Actually, when I go to crush them in the tunnels, and I use my hands around all the bulbs, so I'll tell you, I know about tunnels. And I can't always crush down, but if I put like a stick or something in, it suddenly goes loose. I know there's a tunnel down there, and they're down there, but they're not up to the surface. Where I don't have heavy roots, then they will be closer to the surface. This is what I use to repel flowers. I use deer scram. I buy it by the 20-gallon pail. The Polanski is a lot more expensive, but I'll use them in the beginning because I was told that by Homestead that they will be absorbed into the plant and help make it taste worse. I hope it's true. Then the liquid fence, the repel I've told you about. The other thing that I use are the mesh bags that I get from Brett and Becky. And bulbs that I think that they might eat, I put a little bit of that mesh around them. I leave it open on the top, and I'm hoping that they won't like that plastic mesh and can't bite into it, and it'll discourage them. I do that with my lily bulbs. My lily bulbs, I have lilies. So these are the sources that I tend to use. Brett and Becky is a very good source. And if you go up to their store in the spring, they plant, or actually anytime, they plant the bulbs that are in their catalog. And so you can go up anytime and you can see the bulbs that are currently blooming in their gardens with the sign of what bulb it is. And then that can help you decide what you would like to plant or not plant. John Cheevers and Van Angles are very good for quantity, especially Van Angles. If you want to do, and John Cheevers, if you want to do crocuses and you need large quantities, I go there for my large quantities. Gardenia has great information about it. Internet, I'll do like Holland Bulb Farm, easy to grow, blooming bulb. Holland Bulb Farm, if you get them early in the spring, they're 50% off. So I buy them real early. And then the other ones that I find, Wikipedia, Missouri Botanical, and for the daffodil seek, that's the best one if you really want to know about each individual daffodil of how it grows. So how's my time? I need my watch. Oh, I actually have a couple more minutes, don't I?
Well, we could probably go to questions now.
Okay.
We're at about 5 minutes before the hour at this point. If there are people that have questions, I should have mentioned at the beginning, if you have questions, if you could put them into chat. So that's probably the best way for us to feed them into Mitzi, so that we don't have this being a free-for-all. So if you have questions, if you could type them into the chat, that would be great. While you're doing that, let me just mention, for those of you who don't have questions or don't want to listen to that part of the session, this is a good time for you to take a brief break before our business section. I would say that right at the end of her introduction, Deb Bussert was having network problems, and in fact, she dropped off and she hasn't been able to get back in. I've talked to her by phone, and so if there are one or two people that don't want to wait and be in the business session, that'd be good. In fact, we've had one or two drop-offs now, so I'll give her a call and let her know she can probably sign on. And if I could ask Rick or Dave to watch for her trying to get back on, she's trying to sign back on, and then she'll be here for the business meeting. So if you could type any questions, or since I don't see a lot of typing going on, probably you could unmute and ask your question. So for those who don't have questions, take a brief break, and otherwise, I think people could unmute and ask a question of Mitzi. Mitzi, that was an absolutely wonderful review. In fact, I think this is one that I, for one, will want to refer to. There was so much information, so much useful material there that I think I want to go back and take some better notes and really use your talk as a great reference. It was really superb, and especially knowing that this was a last minute ask, you did just a wonderful job. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mitzi?
Let's see, I saw a couple in the chat room. I was just looking. They were asking about daffodils get bigger and harder to divide over time. Absolutely. Definitely harder. The longer you wait, the harder it is to divide. But if you let them go a few years, you'll get a much better batch of daffodils to enjoy. Let's see, was there any other question? Have I used Bobex? Yes, I've used Bobex. Bobex works like Repel All. I just can't find Bobex in a store, but that is a good one to use too.
Hey, Mitzi.
Yep.
It's Dennis Brandon. I've been using Bobex for several years, and I had recommended it for the Learning Garden project with Bill. So we've started using it there. The only place I've ever found it, you can get it through Amazon, but it's more expensive. I order it directly from the company. If you go to bobex.com, they are great in their product, their guarantees. If you ever have a problem, you just call them and they just ship it to your house. They have a minimum on free shipping, but they have specials periodically and buy one, get one free specials. So I found that it works good. If you're doing bulbs, they recommend that you dip the bulbs in the Bobex before you plant them, similar to what you were saying. But if you're looking for it, go to bobex.com and you'll see everything there.
Thank you. I'm definitely going to do that because I have used it when I lived in New Jersey and I could get it, and then I never see it in the stores anymore.
Yeah, and I'm from New Jersey as well. So yes, you're correct.
How do you spell Bobex?
Bobbex.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions that I need to ask? Oh, and they asked what I soaked it in. I've used liquid fence because it smells bad. And I'll sometimes throw other things in the ground that just smell bad to discourage them from it. You can also, and I have used castor oil, and that does work to help keep them out. If you have to do it properly, start from your house, work it slowly way out to drive them out. But my husband was nice enough to do it, and then he said it's too much work, and he gave up. He used to buy it by the gallon and put it to the hose, and it's still so. But you could try that too.
One of the benefits of the Bobex is once it dries, it will not wash off. And so it's very highly rated because of that. That you spray it, you give it like 6 hours to dry, and then it doesn't wash off if it rains.
Mitzi, is there anything you can plant now?
Right now, I finished my planting like 2 days before Christmas. If you have not yet finished it, you can try it. And I have planted in January some bulbs that I had left over, and they come up there a little bit later. And you may, if you're too late, you may not, don't plant them as deep. You may not get the foliage. I mean, you may get foliage, you may not get the flower if you're too late. A lot of these bulbs need cold. Tulips need 60 days of cold for you to see a flower. And some of the daffodils, depending on what they are, need more cold. Jonquillos do not need as much cold, so they grow better here. Does that answer your question?
I put in
Yes,
tulips over the years. I caged them.
That will work. Good luck, though. It's a lot of work to be. I tried it, and it's
hardware, cloth, and wire, and some tools.
Yep, I did try it. My hands aren't strong enough. Any more questions? Okay.
Great job.
Gary, unmute.
Just an absolutely great job.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Mitzi, do you cut down the flowers after they bloomed right away, or do you let them go to seed?
Okay, that's a very good question. I like a clean looking yard, so I do tend to deadhead my flowers. As far as daffodils go, Brent from Brent and Becky's has said that you do not have to cut the daffodils down, that most of the current daffodils do not produce seeds for it or that are viable, and they don't take that much energy. So you don't have to do it. But the daffodils, the stems are the last to leave for the green foliage, and they get a lot longer if you leave them. Sometimes it's better to take it all the way down. And by the way, you don't remember from Brett and Becky, but when you go to pick a daffodil, let's say you want to have that daffodil in your house to enjoy it, reach all the way down as close to the ground as you can and kind of snap it off with a pull-up, snap-off feeling. And if you turn it around, it will look more solid in it. And that will do a lot better to last the lifetime of the daffodil. When it's further up, it's more of a hollow stem. And you really should not put daffodils within the first 24 hours of picking them in a vase with another type of flower, because it has that poison in it that can harm the other flowers. But tulips, as far as the tulips go, I only had, when I lived here, one tulip come back, and it was in it was a section I put that I forgot that I had planted, and the roots grew by another tree. So it was very rooted and very dry, and that came back like five years. But basically tulips do not come back. So I just dig them up or pull them out or cut them right to the ground. So I start getting rid of the foliage. This year I cut everything back. It was done. I just cut the foliage right off. Okay.
Okay.
Any others?
Mitzi,
Any other
thank you.
questions?
Mitzi,
Okay.
thank you so much for that presentation. And I think we'll go ahead and take our break now.